some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Two. Check 2. Sandwich so good. Sandwich so good. Gang gang. It really is so good, though. That's the thing. It really is. I'm not just saying this. This is not just a catchphrase. It's dripping all over the place now. Yeah, I know. Up the Reds, yeah. It was popping off. It was doing numbers. It's doing numbers. Lodane, thanks for the raid. Did Mass Effect Day. Totally finished one whole quest. There you go. Not bad. Hang on, I gotta get a napkin. I'm dripping sandwich juice all over the place here. The animated version of your tweet is really good. Yeah, someone did the actual like video version of it, which is fantastic. We can take a look at it in a minute. By the way, folks, I gotta say, as many of you know, I have adopted the 5-inch inseam shorts lifestyle. You know that I'm about that life. But recently I was thinking to myself, you know what? These 5-inch inseam shorts, they're good. They're good, but we can go beyond this. We can move past this. We can take it down to 3. We can take it down to 3-inch inseam. Some people maybe thought I was crazy. Some people thought I was going too far. Some people thought I was getting drunk with power in the tiny short lifestyle. But I did indeed get a pair. A little long at 5-inch. We got to bring that in. Exactly. A little bit too much fabric there. I did indeed purchase a pair of 3-inch inseam shorts, which I am wearing right now. And I got to say, I like it. I do. I like it. And I'm not going to apologize for that. Do you want to see the shorts? Do you want to see the shorts, chat? 3 inches. 3-inch inseam. Are they against TOS? It's possible. I don't know. It's definitely walking the line. It's walking that line. Get your fainting couches ready. You ready for this? What do you think? What do you think about that? I like it. I think technically they're running shorts. I'm not like I'm planning on doing any of that, but Anyway, that's the new life update for me. You're ready to be a Bolshevik militia now. Hell yeah. So I'm a little late getting started today because I had to record and produce a whole episode of the Insurgents podcast today. But his Bolsheviks are practically hanging at the bottom. Oh my. Any shorter, we'd have to move into the hot tub section. Yeah, we're not quite ready for that yet. We're not quite ready for the hot tub section yet, folks. I've told you, that's when I get to the 4-digit subs. That's when I get to the 4th digits. And I will stand by my word. And again, I'm not even expecting it to ever happen. It may never happen. That's exactly why I made that promise. Because I know it's unlikely to ever actually come back to haunt me. That's when the hot tub stream will happen at 1,000 subs. One day. Maybe it will happen, maybe it won't. Who knows? Anyway, I recorded a whole entire episode of the Insurgents podcast this morning. Jordan was out of town, so I did a solo episode of the Insurgents podcast, and I had on friend of the stream, Nora Loretto. This was my idea, so I'm guest number 1. Exactly. Maybe an NPC stream would do it. Yeah. I had friend of the stream, Nora Loretto, on the Insurgents podcast. Spoke with her this morning, edited that just now, and released it just now. Really great episode. Really, really good conversation. I hope you enjoy it. But that's where the link is. I encourage everyone to check that out. You should get her on the stream sometime. Well, she's been on before. The last time she came on was around the time of the Quebec election, but always really enjoy speaking to Nora. I mean, it's always just like super easy. I enjoy talking to her. Nora's great to have her weigh in on pretty much anything. So really good podcast episode with Nora. I hope people listen to it. Did I miss the sandwich? It's only like half done. It's this Italian style Cubano. It's really good. It's really, really good sandwich. Sandwich so good. Yes, yes, yes. Nora, so good. Gang, gang. I found that TikTok because it's been in my head all day. It really gets in there, doesn't it? It really gets in there. I'm sure this is the road to 1K subs. I agree. I think that's the way I need to start doing things. Balloon. Caught the beginning stream, sandwich time. Well, that's it. I wanted to, I was getting started late, so I wanted to make sure I didn't keep people waiting too long. So we can have a little bit of time to have some enjoyable discussion and conversation on this program. What's in an Italian Cubano? I like them apart, so it's got to be good together. I actually don't know. I don't even know what's supposed to be in a regular Cubano. I didn't even ask. It's like there's some cheese on there. There's pickle. There's a couple of different kinds of meats. It seems like maybe is that smoked turkey? Some kind of ham? I genuinely don't know. I should probably ask. It's a very good sandwich, though, I'll tell you that. It's really good. This is one of the best sandwiches that I've had in this city. Excuse me. And I'm like, should I have pork belly? Maybe that's what it is. And I was like, it was one of those days when I was quite busy this morning. I know I was up in the morning. I'm getting my kid ready for camp. I'm bringing him there. As soon as I get back, I'm talking to Nora. I'm editing a podcast episode. I was kind of hustling and bustling this morning. And then it comes time to start doing the show, and it's like, I haven't eaten anything. And if I now sit here for like 3 hours and I don't eat, I'm going to start getting hangry on here. And chat, you wouldn't like me when I was hangry, all right? You wouldn't like it. I'll tell you that much. So I just quickly ran out to get this bad boy before I got started. No Friday day camp there. That's convenient. Eat up at school. I kind of dig seeing good food. For whatever reason. Don't ask me to explain why. For whatever reason, me just shoveling food into my mouth while on camera has just become a central part of this show. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why people enjoy it. I couldn't tell you. But people like it. There's some sickos, some real sickos out there. There's some real sickos out there, folks. Let me tell you. Lodane can't tell us either. No one knows. No one knows for sure. Here's some videos of the storm that hit Montreal last night. It was really crazy. Like after the stream yesterday, you might remember I was like getting a fucking tornado warning on my phone right at the end of the stream. I had to rush to go get my kid from camp. You could see the weather system like moving in, like as I was picking him up. We like rushed to get back, and it was just starting to rain. When we got back, and then we got hit by this absolutely massive apocalyptic thunderstorm. It's envy? Okay, that's good. I claim membership to this sicko club. It's okay. If that's what you're into, you don't need to apologize for it. Do you usually get tornado conditions? No, we don't. No, we do not. I'm now on a sandwich hunt. Let us know how that works out. Anyway, here's a clip from this guy. I guess this was in Hochelaga. It was absolutely crazy. One of the craziest thunderstorms I can remember. You can see it moving in here like it was wild. Yeah, it was crazy. Seriously. Yeah, it went on for a good like hour and a half of really intense rain and thunder and lightning. I thought it was fortunate because I was like prepared to lose power. I was like charging all my stuff, prepared to lose power, and we only lost power for like 5 minutes. I'm on like the second floor of an apartment building. It was pretty crazy. I didn't get any good footage of it. I took some of the rain, but Nothing really too crazy, because when the big storm was happening, I was charging my phone because I thought it might lose power and I thought I would need it, so didn't take any footage, but pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy storm conditions yesterday. What else did I want to look at here? Yeah, we got this was fun because I actually did this tweet live yesterday on the stream. It was cool to see that pop off a little bit. And yes, someone made this. Yeah, Laura, aka Ectofun.
It's so good.
Actually made the actual video version.
Ice cream so good. Coconut so good. Coconut so good. Balloon. Gang gang. Gang gang. Ice cream so good. Ice cream so good. Coconut so good. Coconut so good. Balloon. Gang gang. Gang gang. Ice cream so good.
She did a really good job with that. I don't know how she turned that around very quickly. And someone actually in the replies to this posted the Street Fighter video.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Ice cream so good. Gang gang.
Thank you, Cutman. Thank you, Cutman. 23 months of Tier 1 from Cutman. Very, very close, Cutman, to the highly elite and exclusive 2-year, 24-month TRRS sub badge. Very, very close. Yeah, someone I was looking for this clip all day yesterday, and then someone posted it in the replies.
Ice cream so good. Slay. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Slay. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Slay. Ice cream so good. Gang, gang. Ice cream so good.
All right. That's cool.
Ice cream so good. Slay. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Slay. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Slay. Ice cream so good. Gang, gang. Ice cream so good.
All right.
That's good. That's good stuff. Oh. Chin chin, everyone. This is a little catching up from yesterday. Chin chin. Diet Coke, so good. Exactly. Who needs housing and healthcare when you get this? It's easy, Brian. Just everyone becomes an NPC and you get people to send you stickers on social media. And then you can afford food and housing by doing that. It's totally sustainable. It is totally sustainable. My notifications are still just broken now. That fucking racist troll just destroyed my notification system. I did notice, I don't know if Husker is watching right now, Husker do, but I believe Husker donated $5 yesterday. The alert didn't work, so I just didn't notice until later. Husker, if you're there, thank you for the $5. That was very generous of you. One day I will fix this, but now it goes on the pile of things that I already hadn't done for this channel that I've been putting off. Now I gotta fix that somehow. Oh, the sub alerts work, but the tip function doesn't work and the sub counter doesn't work. Thank you, Battle Dancer, for the 42 bits, and thanks, Sunny Solar, for the 8 bits. I will take it. I will take it. I can't afford to be turning away bits. Is the ice cream good? Yes. Yes, it is. with all the NPC stuff in the Street Fighter reference, I wanted to show you this. Okay, one sec, Weenus. Let me check it out. Let's do this. My mouse.
That's cool.
Street Fighter シリーズ今年で30周年おめでとうございます。大人気格闘ゲームストリートファイター2ターボよりサガット対ブランカの激闘のモノマネ。ラウンド1ファイト。
This is uncanny.
You win.
Very nice. It's uncanny.
We simply
It's exactly
use the
like
computer
the
to
game.
mark up the size of the account.
Noodle so good. Noodle so good. Rib rib. Yes yes yes. Yes yes yes. Yes yes yes. Rib rib. Noodle so good.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian, for the 200 friend coin. Thank you for that, Marty. Marty's always taking shots, always trying to stir the pot. I try to cultivate a wrestling fandom in this community that's open and inclusive, that doesn't foster this kind of like factionalism. And Marty's in there always stirring the pot. God damn it. That's right, Red Scary, I lived. How was the book club? I saw the Capital Book Club was going on last night. I had a lot going on. How was that? I feel like maybe I should do those, but I haven't read Capital and I'm going to be totally lost. I feel like I'm just going to benefit from the secondhand knowledge the people in the community are getting from studying Capital. And then I can benefit through osmosis from people's expertise. That's kind of what I'm hoping is going to happen. We're doing the working day next time, which is supposed to be standalone good. Well, you know what? I will try to do my best to participate. How about that? I will really try. Because I know, like, in all honesty, Red Scary, I know you do, like, work hard to, like, do these book clubs and make them really a cool space for people to learn. And I think it's really cool that it goes on in the Discord, so I will try my best to participate in the next one. And we all really appreciate Red Scary and what she does for the community. I know we all do. That's why she's the true VIP. The true VIP of the channel. And I would encourage people to join the Discord if you're not in there. And then you can be part of that as well. And it's just cool. I'm really looking forward to Adaptation on Wednesday. Adaptation in the movie night on Wednesday is going to be fantastic. Really looking forward to that. Hang on just one moment. Excuse me. Had a little runny nose situation there. Mike Pence voice. Yummy ice cream. Ice cream so good. Ice cream so good. Mother, 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 mother. Ice cream so good. Mother. I think Capital is fun to read. Marx dunked on an Oxford professor in a footnote for a page and a half. That does sound great. I always do. Marx would have been such a great poster. It really is like a lot of that early writing is just like his version of posting. Capital so good. Commodity. Capital so good. Commodity. Capital so good. Commodity. Value. 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 Capital so good. Commodity. I'm going to find us something to like watch here. I want to see what's going on. I want to talk about this STRIKEWAVE, continue talking about the WGA and the Screen Actors Guild and all this. You know what though? I think this is good as well. There's a brand new there's a brand new breakthrough news video about NATO. And we have been talking a lot about NATO and the NATO summit this week. Is that Brian and VJ? Oh man, it is VJ. I think maybe we should watch that. What do we think about that? We need to study her in a lab to figure out how she hacked all our brains and to constantly go, ice cream, so good. It's so strange. Like I was saying yesterday, Red Scary, when I first saw that clip, I was like, oh, this says something terrible about humanity and this is bad and shitty, but then I found myself just going like, ice cream, so good. Ice cream, so good. And as I pointed out yesterday, like, look at what I'm fucking doing here on Twitch. Like, it's not like there's that big of a difference, you know? It's really just taking the whole process and streamlining it and taking out all the gum flapping and the commentary and stuff and just getting right down to the call and response. You know? Every stream I've been talking about for the last few days just keeps talking about it. Because it's like, it's weird because it's kind of upsetting, but also kind of hypnotic and enjoyable as well. That's why I think it's captivating for people. I like the gum flapping too, Dummy Dorko. I like it too. I like it as well. Folks, just give me 1 sec, okay? I'm just gonna go, I gotta go like wipe, I gotta go wipe my face, wash my face. I'll be right back. Sorry. 1 moment. Sorry, folks. Just eating that sandwich. I had like sandwich crap on my face and hands and stuff. I want to go cleaned up over here. Just wanted to show off the shorts again. It's not a good angle for that, really. The single popcorn kernel and the hair straightener is the thing that takes it to the next level. I agree, because that just like everything is like linked to the. And here we are talking about it again. Amazing. Everything is linked to the donation and the stickers, but the popcorn thing just seems like a totally separate thing from that. You know, it's really strange. That's the one thing that I don't really get. It keeps you watching. You got to see that kernel get popped. Man. Okay, we can't keep talking about this, though. I did too much of this yesterday. Okay, let's just see what else we have here on the agenda. I've been doing a lot of gum flapping this week, so maybe it might be a nice time to just kind of chill a little bit. A lot of gum flapping going on over here.
I got a neighbor.
Yeah, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do, because I did want to talk about the STRIKEWAVE stuff, but since I focused on that a lot yesterday, talking about the Hollywood strike, and we got the impending UPS strike coming as well, I think maybe taking the weekend to see how that stuff develops, and then I'll work on bringing on someone to the stream next week. We were talking about maybe having Fieldy from the Minion Death Cult podcast. He would be great to have on. I'll work on like a guest for next week to bring on to talk about the STRIKEWAVE stuff. We have been talking a lot this week about NATO and the NATO summit and everything like that, so I think it would be a good opportunity to watch this video from Breakthrough News about the summit. It's with our friend VJ Prashad, friend of the stream, and my personal friend as well. My personal friend, VJ, who's been on the show multiple times. I think probably a great opportunity to take a look at this video. What do we think about that? It seems good to me too. Let's do that. Let's do that. I updated the title. Okay, let's do this. Let's watch this video. This is VJ Prashad on the Socialist Program with Brian Becker. Should be great stuff.
We need a new system. We need a new society. We need to demand that which may have sounded impossible even a few weeks ago, but is not only realizable, but an imperative necessity. NATO leaders met in Lithuania this week. Finland and Sweden are now both in or joining NATO. Ukraine was promised membership or a path to membership inside of NATO. The U.S. proxy war with Russia gets more dangerous with every passing month. Welcome to this week's episode of the Socialist Program. I'm your host, Brian Becker. Today we're talking with VJ Prashad. VJ is the executive director of the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research. He's the chief editor of Leftward Books. He's a prolific author, most recently publishing a new book with Noam Chomsky called The Withdrawal: Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, and the Fragility of U.S. Power. VJ Prashad, welcome back.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Great to be with you.
Well, we're very honored you were able to join us. I know you're busy.
It was funny to see the NATO freaks lose their mind about NATO not getting in, about Ukraine not getting in. I mean, I don't know what they fucking expected. Like, the whole war started because of Russia saying, like, Ukraine's not going to be part of NATO. So I don't know what they expect to happen if they're now, like, if they do bring Ukraine into NATO. I mean, I just, it seems to me to be something that's like deliberately stoking the conflict even more and trying to escalate it even more, which I guess we shouldn't put it past some of these folks. It seems like that's the only strategy they're interested in, but it does seem a little strange to me when this was what all of this was about.
You're in Brazil, Tricontinental Institute research takes you all over the world, in fact. And that's one of the reasons why people should subscribe to the
But GPA Boost,
newsletter.
You say the idea is that just because you're in a club doesn't mean that's something adversarial, but it is adversarial, though. I think that's the point. And from Russia's perspective as well, it's always been an anti-Russian alliance. Encircling what was once the Soviet Union gets destroyed, Russia gets humiliated, millions of people's lives are ruined. And they continue expanding right up to their borders, even after Russia gives up on their entire economic and social system. Let's just get Russia in NATO. Well, Russia wanted to be in NATO. That's the whole point. They wanted to be part of the club, and they wanted to join NATO. And then the NATO said, "No, you're not allowed. We're just going to continue expanding right up to your border, even though now you're ostensibly our ally." And they were like quite clear about, after a certain point, okay, well then fuck you. You're not going to continue expanding it or else there's going to be consequences. And they said that repeatedly over and over and over. Very, very clear about it. And lo and behold, when they continued, there were consequences, which they repeatedly said. So Russia tried joining the Russia haters club, exactly. And they found out to their unfortunate situation that they're not allowed to be in the Russia hater club. It's the No Russia club.
And to the publication. Anyway, thank you so much for taking time out. You know, VJ, the meeting in NATO, I want to get your thoughts on it, your impression, your take on it. Zelensky wasn't perfectly satisfied, and there's a Washington Post story today that some American national security officials consider him to be a little bit insubordinate for chastising NATO for not giving Ukraine full membership. Of course, the Biden
he should be. He's gotten screwed by NATO at every turn.
Was arguing that to include
it's
Ukraine
time,
in NATO
Vlad,
right now
Zelensky.
triggers Article 5, which means all-out war between the U.S., NATO powers, and Russia. I want to talk to you about some of that, but you know, I want to let's take us back 7 years. Hillary Clinton running for president. Made a major speech in June 2016, and I want to quote these words because they're very emblematic of the thinking. Here's what she said: "Moscow has taken aggressive military action in Ukraine right on NATO's doorstep." And I was like, wow, that's so important to remember because Russia didn't go somewhere. Ukraine didn't go somewhere. Anyway, the presentation is that Moscow is on the march, while NATO has expanded so dramatically, doubling in size since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Anyway, I think it's important for our audience, especially people who are watching this for the first time, maybe mainly getting their news from the mainstream media, to put this into some perspective.
Well, Brian, it's important to look at the history of NATO, I think, and put NATO itself in its context. NATO was one of many military pacts that the United States created in the 1940s and 1950s, a part of the attempt to encircle the Soviet Union and, of course, encircle China. There was a great anxiety when the People's Republic of China was created in 1949. So, in fact, this series of different treaty organizations were created almost sequentially. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization led the way in 1949. That was one of the most important. Western European countries effectively subordinating their security apparatus to the United States. US bases from Ramstein in Germany all the way down to Italy, having a permanent foothold inside Europe, with NATO being essentially the vehicle for the United States having a military presence in Europe. But then there was the Central Treaty Organization, the so-called Baghdad Pact, which was to bring in the Near Eastern countries, Iraq, Iran at the time, very close US allies, Turkey to some extent, although Turkey...
Hang on just one moment, folks. I'm just going to adjust some levels here so I can hear this a bit better, but so it's not too loud for you. I'm going to turn that down there. How about this?
Look to Europe for its own security at this period. These countries created the Central Treaty Organization, as it were,
that seems good,
backed by the US in the underbelly of the Soviet Union. And then there was the Manila Pact in Manila, Philippines, which created the Southeast Asian Treaty Organization. Now, that was effectively to flank both China and Russia from Japan all the way down to the Philippines. Now, why I put these in context is that it's important to see that these were all about encircling the USSR and the People's Republic of China. When the Soviet Union collapsed.
It's amazing how they get away with this defensive encirclement thing. It's been decades of this. Oh, no, we're not encircling you in like a way that's meant to like mess with you. We're doing it to just protect everybody. That's why we're surrounding you with military bases and aiming missiles at you. Biden said the same thing about China this week. It's like, it's not our intention to try and encircle you for that reason. It's like, yeah, it is. It's like, it's amazing that people still buy this. And people can still frame Russia as being aggressive or China as being aggressive, responding to this military encirclement. Military encirclement, arming and funding proxies right on their border. I mean, it's so aggressive. It's so aggressive and hostile. And then we act so surprised when these places that are being encircled react with their own hostility. And we say, whoa, bro, calm down. You're so angry. Or you're so angry. We're just training our missiles on you in a defensive way. That's all. Why are you so hostile? It's so childish. Seriously. When I was a kid playing StarCraft, my teammate built a bunch of turrets in my base and said they were defense, then went hostile and killed me. And we must learn a lesson from that. It's just a bunch of fascists joining hands in a circle in a friendly way. We're singing Kumbaya together.
1991. At the time, already the Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, SEATO, and the Central Treaty Organization, CENTO, had been effectively disbanded. Well, in a sense, they had also been disbanded by political events in different parts of the world. But NATO was left standing. NATO was the only one of these major security pacts that outlives the Soviet Union. And NATO, not content with whatever security arrangement it had for Western Europe, began to expand eastward. It's very interesting that Lithuania, where this current summit was held on July 11th and 12th, Lithuania joins NATO in 2004, one of the first countries, along with the other Baltic states, to join NATO. The Baltic states, by the way, were the last to join the Soviet Union, and they were the first, in a way, to join NATO. This is an interesting development, Brian, because it's now, I think, very well known that when the East Germany was going to be absorbed by West Germany, there was a serious discussion between the Soviet Union and the United States government, inclusive of the Federal Republic of West Germany.
Yeah, SV Harkin, totally.
About whether NATO should be allowed to expand beyond Germany's frontiers. Now that East Germany was going to join up with West Germany to create a unified Germany, the idea was that Germany in total would be part of NATO. But then what happens to countries east of the German border? And there was effectively an agreement between James Baker, the Secretary of State of the United States, and Edward Shevardnadze, who was the at the time the foreign minister of the USSR. There was effectively an agreement. There's a piece of paper where they accept this, that the NATO border will not move 1 inch beyond Germany's eastern border. That agreement is important. So not only did NATO not get disbanded in the post-Cold War era, in fact, disappear into the annals of history along with...
That does make you say, doesn't it, Xin Chao?
But in fact, NATO started to expand quite vigorously, absorbing a number...
Also the first attempt at a color revolution in Ukraine in 2004 as well, right? The Orange Revolution.
Of countries, as I said, the Baltic states, which border Russia, were absorbed into NATO in the early 2000s. And then there was this pressure point placed on Ukraine from roughly around 2007, 2008, the question of Ukraine's accession to NATO. And, I want to close this sort of storyline, Brian, just by saying one of the reasons why it's important to understand Ukraine becoming a fulcrum after 2007, 2008, because it was in 2007 that Vladimir Putin, head of government of Russia, goes to the Munich Security Conference.
This is when they started to freak out about Putin.
Conference, he says there should be no single master in the world.
We should watch that speech sometime. I think that would be really good to do, to watch that speech from the security conference in 2007 by Putin, because that was a really game-changing moment. That was when the American sort of security state started freaking out about Putin, who was their guy prior to that, And it's really when he announced his intentions to have his own, to say like, that was his speech where he said, okay, I can't be in your special little club. All right, well, fuck you. We're not going to let you push us around anymore then. And that's when they started like losing it. We really have to watch that sometime, considering how consequential it's been.
It's the first time the Russian government has come out there openly and said that we don't accept the US international order. Now, the reason this is important is from 1991 till roughly 2006, 2000.
Another far-right gangster we empowered turning on us. Dude, no one could have foreseen this. This has never happened before. And when it does eventually happen with Zelensky, they're going to be doing the same things. What? This guy? Turning on us as well? And I guess we got to get rid of him now, too. Ah, shucks. And they're going to pretend to be surprised. But because we have brains and memories, and because we think with Marx, and we don't have this baby talk nonsense that you get when you think without Marx, we won't be surprised by it. That's what dialectical materialism does for you. It gives you the ability to predict the future with pinpoint accuracy.
2007, Russia was very much part of the Western international order. In fact, Russia became a member of the G8. It became the 8th country in the G7. And also Russia was participating with NATO. There was very much this Russia-NATO alliance that was developing, which was, to people like me, fascinating that NATO, which had been constructed effectively
to
constrain the Soviet Union, was now drawing Russia into its orbit. What's the point of NATO when you have the United Nations? If everybody's going to join NATO, then why have the United Nations? Well, the reason you want NATO with everybody in it is that's an instrument of US power, whereas the United Nations, at least nominally or notionally, is an instrument of all the 193 member nations. So when
they had it,
2007,
they had it all sewn up.
And starts to
they had everything all sewn up. They really had kind of an end of history type thing going on. And they, through their own belligerence and their own arrogance, have now created this situation. Pushed China and Russia right back together. Great job, guys. Great job. You had Russia begging you to be part of the crew, part of the group. You said no, because you just wanted to stick it to them a little bit more. And then there you go. Now that's what you end up with. Good job. Good job, fellas.
Break with the Western-led alliance, it's then that Ukraine becomes a fulcrum. And we've gone now from 2007 to the present into a very dangerous situation.
Yeah, thank you so much for that history. I think it's critically important. And right after Putin said there was no single master, at the 2008 Bucharest meeting of NATO, the U.S. announced, well, we're going to include Georgia, another former Soviet republic, part of the Soviet Union, and Ukraine. And of course, Ukraine was the second largest Soviet republic population-wise after Russia in the Soviet Union. We're going to include Georgia and Ukraine into NATO. That was in 2008. And right after that, Russian troops move into Georgia. And it's really quite clear that this is a red line. Why is it a red line? Help the audience who doesn't really understand the history, the geography, the politics of Ukraine or earlier Georgia. These are the red lines. I mean, Russia undoubtedly did not want Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, former Soviet republics, so close to St. Petersburg, to join NATO. But okay, it wasn't a red line, but Georgia and Ukraine were red lines. Let's just talk about why.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. And it's an interesting question in the field of international relations. There's a phrase that goes back to the Potsdam Conference held in the dying days of World War II, when the major powers, the Soviets, the United States, Britain, and so on, sat around and said, well, how are we going to understand the post-Second World War dispensation? What's it going to look like? And there was a discussion about, quote unquote, spheres of influence. Now, obviously, the term spheres of influence predates Potsdam, goes back to the Congress of Vienna in 1815 and so on. This term has a long history. But for our purposes, we got to come to what they were discussing at Potsdam, when they were sitting and having this important conversation about, well, who's going to influence whom in this new era? That how do we maintain the peace, as it were, after a very difficult and dangerous war? I mean, a ghastly war. Not only did this war contain within it the Holocaust, but it also contained within it the bombardment of civilian areas in cities and so on. It's actually quite forgotten that World War II was the principal experience for people of mass bombardment of civilian areas from the air. where you were really unprotected by your own military. I mean, entire cities were wiped out. The firebombing of Dresden, the bombing of London, and in the eastern sector, I mean, the way in which the Japanese destroyed Chinese cities is quite remarkable. I mean, in terms of the span of world history, it was almost like the sacking of a city at the end of a war, except the war hadn't ended. You were able to destroy civilian areas, killed millions of people around the world, civilians who had no part in this war. So there was a real concern at Potsdam. How do we, quote unquote, maintain the peace, even though there are adversaries and there are problems between the Soviet Union and the British? I mean, for God's sake, you had Churchill sitting across the table from Stalin.
That white jacket was
no friendship between these two people.
A boss look for the big man.
So this is a very important thing for people to understand, that there was a sensibility. Look, we're going to have a conflict that's going to continue. We don't agree with each other and so on. Nonetheless, let's find a way to, in fact, manage the process after this war ends. And they did draw a line, a sphere of influence. They did say to the Soviets that, look, you can't mess around in France and in Italy and in Greece, in fact. You can't mess around. This is our sphere, Western sphere.
He didn't know what he was doing with the white jacket.
In my opinion, I have second thoughts about this. The Soviets basically withdrew.
Easily the coolest guy there. I mean, there's no denying that.
Movements in France and in Italy, and decisively in Greece, where they didn't back the communists at crucial points. So the Soviets kept the bargain, saying that, okay, the other side of the line, that's your situation.
Oh man, Weenus, you're really putting the auto mod settings into some tricky position here. We may have to revisit that permitted term there.
We're going to have various contests and problems between each other, but we'll basically honor the fact that that's your arena. On the same end, the West was supposed to honor the fact that countries close to the Soviet Union were going to be its sphere of influence. Now, you've got to understand that the Russian people, as a people, have a long history of facing external aggression. Most recently, of course, when they were talking about this, was the way in which the West, one way or the other, egged on the Nazis to go into the Soviet Union for a brutal war against the Soviet people. Millions of people killed. The siege of the Battle of Stalingrad, now quite forgotten by young people and so on. There's a real sense of fear, foreboding, that the West was going to attack Russia. This is a very old fear that is there. And, apparently the sphere of influence agreement, why Stalin agrees to it, is to, in a sense, quell that fear, to give the sensibility that, okay, we're going to be somewhat protected from having the Russian people attacked. Well, it's quite clear when you look at the language after the Soviet Union collapsed, it's quite clear that there was a feeling, a sensibility emerged in the West that Russia was going to be absorbed in the Western scheme of things. They organized the new Russia under the leadership of Boris Yeltsin. They organized Russia in the image of a kind of laboratory of neoliberalism. If Chile, now 50 years ago, the coup.
They got that shot. They didn't get a Marshall Plan. They got the shock therapy.
Russia was also a much greater scale laboratory for a kind of neoliberal politics, a globalized politics. In fact, you could say that it's the United States that produced the oligarchs in Russia. They produced that whole setup of these people who were
and
able
Putin
to
himself.
Take public assets and privatize them. So this anxiety that is there in Russian history of being attacked mustn't be underestimated. I don't think it's some sort of, a pathology that the Russians have, but it's got to be put on the table. And certainly when it was put on the table that Georgia and Ukraine were going to be brought into NATO, there was a great deal of anxiety. The Russians basically have a fear that if NATO absorbed Georgia and Ukraine, that NATO weaponry would be within striking distance of major cities in Russia. People should know that the geography of Russia is thus that most of the major cities are at its western end. And there's a genuine fear that if you put, intermediate missiles in Ukraine or in Georgia, they can fire at Moscow and Moscow will not be able to defend itself. This is the legitimate fear that the Russians have.
Yeah. And there's another element of this, there's the geography of it, which is Russia and Ukraine share this huge border. So if you, and the US abandoned the Intermediate Nuclear Range Treaty that Gorbachev and Reagan signed in 1986. And that treaty took out of Europe those kind of missiles, the ones you're referring to, Vijay, which had a flight time of 6 minutes to their target. And in the early 1980s, when this is what created the anti-nuclear movement in Europe, was that because Europe knew if there's a nuclear war, it's going to be Europe that will be basically incinerated. Those weapons, the Russians, the Soviets couldn't defend against. So they were placed all around the Soviet Union in 1981, 82. The Soviets really felt the US was moving towards war. All of those missiles targeted every Soviet political office. It wasn't simply military targets, there was political offices. And there's this mass movement that's born in Europe and in the United States. And in the United States in 1982, 1 million people demonstrated in Central Park on June 12th, 1982, demanding a nuclear freeze, meaning don't have a nuclear war, because everything felt like we were moving towards nuclear war. So Reagan and Gorbachev signed this agreement in 1986 to get rid of these kind of weapons. So the U.S. abandons the treaty in the last couple of years under Trump. And so those weapons are now, quote, legal again. And if Ukraine has this long border with Russia, it means those missiles, if Ukraine's brought into NATO, will be pointed towards Moscow, for sure. No question about it. But there's another element, and this is that Ukraine, before 1922, before the creation of a Soviet Socialist Republic of Ukraine that was part of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics that was first signed in treaty in 1922 and then constitutionally validated in 1924. Before that, Ukraine was part of the Russian Empire. And from the point of view of Russia and Russians, Kiev, like Moscow, was considered almost like sort of one and the same. I mean, we have a difference of opinion with Vladimir Putin, who blames Lenin and Lenin's position on the national question for the creation of a Ukrainian
huge
state.
L.
You know, Putin has a different attitude, certainly, than we do here on the socialist program. But that said, there's no question that in Russia, Kiev and that entire area, including, of course, the Donbass, was considered Russian. So it's not like the U.S. would be placing these kind of missiles with a flight time of 5 minutes in some faraway land, some far off or foreign country. From the Russian point of view, and I think this is also why Ukraine was always a red line, in a way it would be putting U.S. missiles sort of not even on Russia's border, but almost in Russia from a psychological point of view. Again, we don't agree with Putin on his position on Ukraine's status, but that's not my point here. My point is, from a Russian point of view, Ukraine had to always be a red line because of the geography, the military thing, but also because of the way Ukraine is viewed inside of Russia.
You know, yes, that's absolutely true. But I also wanted to mention one other thing, Brian, which often gets forgotten, which is that, you know, well, global warming might change matters, but until global warming happens, Russian Navy had only 2 warm water ports of importance. One was in Sevastopol in Crimea, and the other was in Tartus in Latakia in Syria. These were the 2 major warm water ports where Russia used to keep its naval fleet during the long winter. I mean, all the other ports freeze up. Now, again, this is changing with climate change, but for now, this is the reality. And interestingly,
just hand that over to NATO. What's wrong?
Discuss things with people in Moscow, you know, people at strategic centers and so on. And you talk to them about why they intervened in Crimea in 2014, and then why they intervened in Syria in 2015. You know, these are interventions happening roughly at the same time. Many of them raised the issue of the fact they felt that the West wanted to seize from Russia its 2 warm water ports at around the same time, that these were not, you know, separate instances of quote unquote expanding democracy, one in Ukraine and one in Syria, that there was a sensibility inside the security establishment in Russia that somehow the West wanted to seize the 2 places where Russia had warm water ports for its navy. So
maybe they were onto something with that. I don't know.
That takes place in Crimea,
there may have been something to that.
A much broader perspective, a kind of geostrategic perspective from the Russian point of view, that they worried that, you know, they're going to lose this important naval base. Apart from the emotional resonance of the fact that there's an understanding that these places are, you know, have Russian populations and so on. There's also this underlying side to it. The reason I'm bringing this up is because, you know, much has been said about the absorption of Crimea and parts of the Donbass after 2014, but it's not been put into the broader picture of what happens to Russia in this period. See, in this same period,
I didn't know that either. I'm sure we've heard that before. The thing about the Syrian port being the other port besides Crimea. I'm sure we've heard that on one of the numerous videos or things that we've watched on that, but I'm not sure I absorbed that information. But it does absolutely put the Russian intervention there in a different light. You know, I thought one part of it was just Russia standing up to the U.S.-led world order and just saying, no, you're not going to overthrow Syria. But it turns out it's not entirely altruistic. They're also protecting their own interests through that. Yeah, I'm sure that he's spoken about it before, for sure. That's very interesting. In both Crimea and Syria, and what that was like 2014 and then 2015, the Russian interventions in both of those places. Yeah. But then it's like, it's so understandable. It's so understandable why they would react this way. The idea that people just like flippantly say like, why didn't they just like just let go of Crimea? Now that America has their pro-EU, pro-NATO, pro-Western government in Ukraine, and Crimea has been part of Ukraine for a couple of decades, even though that's not even really barely that's not like this long-standing history or anything like that. Was only given by Khrushchev. Yeah, just give over your base. Just give over one of your two warm water ports, one of your largest military bases. Or yeah, just let the United States arm fucking rebranded Al-Qaeda in Syria until Assad government falls and you got some U.S. proxy regime there that has the other port as well. Why didn't they just let them do that? You know? It's actually pretty easy to understand why they didn't want to do that. Would the United States just allow some other country to walk in and take this kind of territory, especially this like important military infrastructure? No, they would not. I think we all know that.
Going on regarding Russia that are important. Number one, Russia begins to become a major energy supplier to the West. This is a consequence of the US wars against Iraq first, and then Libya in 2011. You got to understand that Libya was the provider of energy for much of Europe, but the NATO war against Libya, to my mind, a horrendous war against the Libyan people. The NATO war against Libya, in fact, removes energy sources from Europe, a major energy source of Europe. It's interesting that then the conflict over
and Europe
Ukraine,
just says, "Thank you, America. Merci, America."
For Europe, which is Russia, which becomes the predominant energy source for many countries,
Cowards.
especially Germany. So the first development is the increase of Russian energy that comes into Europe in this period, particularly after the war, NATO's war against Libya. The second is you start to see a close interaction between Russia and China at this time, when Russia and China start to firstly, clean up their border dispute, the Russia-China border dispute, which goes back to, maybe it goes back to 1949, in fact, earlier. They begin to sort out the border dispute. Trade begins to increase between the two countries and so on, and they begin to integrate some of their strategic thinking. That's the second important thing I think that has to be put on the table. Well, the third thing in this period is that, of course, this is of great anxiety to the United States, because the United States is not worried about Ukraine merely for Ukraine. The history of Georgia is very interesting. They forget about Georgia after the 2008 conflict. It's not that there's an enduring, there are no Georgian flags flying all over the place. But the United States begins to see that this integration of China with Russia, begins to see that this integration of Russia and China with Europe, all of these are threatening directly the strategic interests of the United States. And you begin to see a ramping up of pressure, which includes what you mentioned earlier, the United States government from the Intermediate Nuclear Missiles Treaty. There was an earlier withdrawal, just to put it on the table, again, unilateral withdrawal by the United States, by George W. Bush from the Ballistic Missile Treaty. That's an important withdrawal, because it removes the possibility for a lot of these countries to defend themselves. So first, you cannot defend yourself, and then missiles available at your doorstep. So putting this in context, this third part also brings in Taiwan, because it's around the same period that the US ramps up pressure on. Again, Taiwan and China have the similar issue as Ukraine and Russia, because Beijing is very clear that if Taiwan, quote unquote, becomes part of some direct strategic alliance of the United States, the US starts to base weapons in Taiwan, this is going to be a great threat to the genuine security of the Chinese people.
And unlike with Russia and Ukraine, where there's some ambiguity, even the United States government itself admits that Taiwan is part of China, which, even though there's a lot of historical links with Russia and Ukraine, it had been understood to be its own separate place at that time. But even America, while they try to talk about the differences and the differentiations, and they try to peel off Taiwan in its own way and make it its own sort of unique place, even the U.S. government does admit that it is part of China. But they yearn for freedom. Yeah, for now. We'll see if they change their stance on that. The cowardly thing about the U.S. is that they keep acting as if they are for sure acting in a way to nurture this like Taiwanese independence movement, while simultaneously every time they get called out on it saying like, no, of course we believe in the one China policy. Well, we would never dream of violating the one China policy. Meanwhile, Pelosi's going there. They're still encouraging this kind of shit. They're still up to their old tricks there, and they're fostering these independence movements. They're arming and training the military, etc. But, you know, every time they get called on it, they're like, what? Us? No, of course not. But yeah, they still very much are. Always talking out of both sides of the mouth. It's so cowardly. But that is one big difference between Ukraine and Russia. They can't really claim that they're two different places when they themselves have admitted, even recently, that it's all part of China. They're just buying time for companies to move manufacturing out of China so they can actually go to war without crippling themselves. Yeah, they're trying to shore up their own microprocessor production. They're trying to decouple economically to the point that they can really ramp things up. Yeah, not touching you. God, it's so fucking annoying. I will turn this whole goddamn empire around. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. Fuck, what are you, children? Jesus. Hello, Red Maize. What's up?
I just want to put these three things on the agenda, Brian, because you got to see this. You know, too many people look at this just in a Ukrainian perspective, as if this is a conflict of and about Ukraine itself. But in fact, Ukraine is actually sitting on a series of dynamics that impact the whole world.
So Vijay, what you're saying, basically, what we see emerging in 2014 and 15, the war in Syria, and the war or the what happens after the coup d'etat in February 2014 that overthrows the Yanukovych government in Ukraine, which was a neutral government. It wasn't anti-West, but it was neutral. It said, we're not going to take Ukraine into NATO. The US and Germany and the EU countries, they're all want to overthrow the government. They do. They rely on fascist militias to do it. That's 2014. And then basically the Putin government.
Oh my goodness. Red Maize. Thank you very much for the 5 gifted subs. Thank you for that. Very kind of you. Thank you. And in fact, this is a good point to pause it halfway through this video to remind people, first of all, not only should you support Breakthrough News, please support Breakthrough News. Okay? I always feel a little weird when we're watching Breakthrough News content and then I'm using it to get people to subscribe to this program. Please subscribe to Breakthrough News. It's absolutely fantastic. They really deserve your support. At the very least, subscribe to their YouTube channel and support however you can. And we're going to continue this video in just a few moments. But I should remind you, we're going on an hour 15 into this. I'm going to be here for about another 90 minutes or so. And if, like Red Maize just did now, you would like to support this channel, TRRS, the channel that you're watching right now, and you want to support the work that I do on here on twitch.tv, please, if you can, subscribe. It's been a great week of streaming here at TRRS. It's been really fantastic stuff. And the only way that I'm able to do this program, the only way that this content's able to stay on the air on twitch.tv is through the extremely generous community members of TRRS. So if you can, please subscribe. It's $5 per month. It's completely free of charge with an Amazon Prime account, which you can very easily convert to a Twitch Prime sub. Totally free, very helpful. You can subscribe or you can gift subs as well. And as you all know, and as the alert just let us know, that gifting 5 or more subs does indeed instantly rocket you right up to the very, very tip top of the friendship triangle system. Doesn't that sound nice? Doesn't that sound nice, folks? We all need a community, okay?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old
Lord.
Rob to talk you through all this.
Holy Lord. Anon.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Which one is the Prashad alert? That's the 10 gifted sub alert, which whoever the beautiful, wonderful,
you can count on me. You're going to have good
anonymous
old Rob
gifter just
to,
was
talk
that
you
just
through all
gifted
this.
10 subs didn't trigger it because they're Anon.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob.
Oh my goodness,
talk you through all
Anon,
this.
we love it. Thank you so much for the 10 gifted subs. That's ludicrous.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And now I'm just going to let each one play.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
But if anyone does want to trigger the elusive, exclusive VJ alert,
you can count
you
on
can
me.
do
You're
so
gonna have good
by,
old Rob
just like
to,
Anon just
talk you
did,
through all this.
very, very generously gifting 10 subs or more.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob
How many more
to
is that?
talk you through
Still
all
got a
this.
couple more to go.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Gifting anonymously is kind of a troll. I mean, I'll take it. It is kind of a stun lock. The 10 anonymous gifted subs is a little bit of a stun lock. But thank you to whoever you are, our brave and wonderful anonymous gifter. Thank you so much for the 10 gifted subs, and thanks Diego as well for the gifted sub. The most Christ-like of all trolls. I mean, I'll take it. GPA boost, I think if it was you that just gifted the 10 subs right now, I think you would just do it with your own name. Why would you anonymously gift subs and then take credit for it afterwards when there's no way of knowing who it was? Is your sub counter still in manual mode? Yes, it is. The alerts are just completely broken on the channel. Thank you, CSIS. Exactly. CSIS is trying to stun lock me. It was actually me, and I was so irresponsible because we can't pay our mortgage now. You're welcome, Rob. Well, thank you, Marty. Thank you for sacrificing your family's economic security to support this channel. You already do so much for this channel, Marty, and now you're taking out a second mortgage to get some slubs. Thank you for that. Guy who does a non-gifties then brags is a funny type of guy. It is funny. Yeah. It is funny. So, folks, does anyone else want to support TRRS? Does anyone else want to become an elite tier community member with a gift of 5 subs or above, which also triggers a delightful alert of me doing a funny dance on the screen? I'm so close to being one of those NPC streamers. Like, it's really not that far away. That's why I would never make fun of Pinky Doll or whoever it is. I would never make fun of it. I'm not above that. You think I'm above being an NPC? I'm not. Believe me. Believe me. Yes, yes, yes. I'm not making fun of her. I think she's a genius businesswoman. I agree. This is a no Pinky Doll slander channel. You know? I wouldn't do it. This is a Pinky Doll stands only stream. You can even break character and yell at someone in French. Did you see the video where she did that? I saw that as well. Yeah. I think there was one as well where there was like a dog barking in the background and she was trying to yell at the dog while also staying in character. That was interesting. Marxism, Pinky Dollism. That's right. So folks, before we move on, can we hit the 20 barrier before we move on? Can we make it to 20 subs before we go back to the video? I would love to just go right back to the video and continue having this important discussion and commentary about NATO and the history of Ukraine and all this good stuff. Is there one generous chatter, one brave hero that wants to step to the plate and allow me to continue the segment where we talk about important news and political and geopolitical analysis? And I can get out of Pinky Doll mode. Robbie Doll. I'm holding the news hostage, that's right. How many subs for around using iron to popcorns? I don't even have a flat iron. Like I said, it's not my emo band days anymore. I used to have a flat iron that I would use sometimes. Those days are past now, though. I do not have a flat iron anymore. I don't think I could pull off that look anymore. I don't know if I ever pulled it off, actually, if you think about it. If you see any pictures of me from that era, it's a little bit dubious, frankly. Bobby Dog. No, we didn't call you. We said Pinky Doll, which is kind of close. It was of the moment. Listen, it was like 2007. Fucking give me a break. Everyone was frying the shit out of their hair with a flat iron. It's true. It's just what we did back then. Kids these days will never understand. It was the style at the time. And we had white belts. We had white belts and skinny jeans. I was just rocking out to Twin Crystals, my favorite band from 2007. I know if I know them. I did do a Blue Sky post the other day where I referenced Taking Back Sunday, Tell All Your Friends. The song, I think it's the song You Know How I Do. I gotta give that a listen as well. That's a little bit further back. That's 2003, I think. What a fucking great album that is, though. It's so good. So chat, will you let me go back to doing the news now? Will you let me go back to doing the news? Taking Back Sunday were so in their zone with like 3 albums in a row. I think the other, like the follow-up was good, but for me it was always about that first one, and I think their guitar player split.
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I think the guitar player split to do that. Oh, I started that other band. What was it called? I can't remember. And I guess I was a Taking Back Sunday purist. Korn, exactly. That's it. Yeah. That's right. Thank you, Dummy Dorco, for the gifted sub. Very, very much appreciated. Thank you for that. Do we hear 2 more, folks? Can I stop holding the news hostage? Do we hear 2 more subs so I can start getting back to this important business? Get Up Kids. I was a huge Get Up Kids fan. Huge. Jonathan Davis, formerly of Taking Back Sunday fame. What was that band called? John Nolan. Straylight Run. He left to do Straylight Run. Taking Back Thursday. That's right. And he's changed it up a little bit.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Hey, look at that. Part Ian. Thank you, Part Ian, for the 2 gifted subs, including to friend of the stream and my boss, John Cipher. That's what I'm talking about. I'm going to put on some of the Used today and really got into my emo mode. So the Used got really big like the year after I started moving away from that scene, but there are some really good songs on that first The Used album, though. I really liked the Slow Jam one. I think it's called Blue and Yellow. Fuck, it's really good. I might have to listen to that later. And Catalepsy Kills. I'm sorry that with all the gifted subs that just came out, you somehow dodged all the subs. I was just typing Blue and Yellow. It is top tier. That's a top 5 or top 10 like emo song of that era. Blue and Yellow is now canceled. That's true. Yeah, I didn't like the screamy ones quite as much. I liked that slower, quieter vibe to that one. Blue and Yellow, it should become the new anthem. My first little band I was in covered that album in one of Finch's albums. Finch was another big one from that era as well. That's good. Never gonna find it, looking for it, gonna come your way, yeah. Oh, you never find it. That's good shit. I'm gonna listen to that when I go pick up my kid from camp. Okay, let's go back to the news. Thank you, folks. Thank you for supporting the stream. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, especially, everyone, but especially Anonymous Gifter for the whopping 10 gifted subs. That was fantastic. Thank you for that. Is this a drive-through records reunion? Sometimes it happens. I think a couple of us came from that kind of scene. I was very much part of the whole drive-through records fandom, definitely. Starting Line. That's probably, of all the big pop punk bands of that era, I think that first Starting Line album was probably my favorite. It's so fucking good. I love AFI as well, King Window. I used to have a really cool AFI hoodie, actually, and I wish I still had it. It was Black Sails in they had that they did Black Sails in the Sunset, which I really loved. They did the All Hallows EP. AFI was so good. And then they got mainstream after that, and they still put out a couple of really good albums, like even on a major label. Dream Car, singer of AFI, says Davey Havoc from AFI with the band from No Doubt, but they make post-punk. That sounds interesting. I've never heard of that at all. I got to check that out. Anyway, enough of this. Enough reminiscence. We can talk about... we should do the segment Millennial Memories. That's true, yeah. It's so funny in these moments when I realize we're all from the same age group, same interest offshoots. Anyways, we'll move on from this. We can reminisce more about bands that we used to like 20 years ago another time. Let's get back to this video with Brian and VJ about NATO, and we'll keep having more just important discussion and analysis. Thanks again, everyone, for supporting the show.
Says, well, Russia...
I'm going to go back to the beginning of Ryan's comments here. Brian's comments.
What we see emerging in 2014 and 15, the war in Syria, and the war, what happens after the coup d'etat in February 2014 that overthrows the Yanukovych government in Ukraine, which was a neutral government. It wasn't anti-West, but it was neutral. It said, we're not going to take Ukraine into NATO. The U.S. and Germany and the EU countries, they're all want to overthrow the government. They do. They rely on fascist militias to do it. That's 2014. And then basically the Putin government says, well, Russia is going to have or sponsor basically a referendum so that the people in Crimea can decide, do you want to be part of Ukraine, which now has this right-wing anti-Russian government, or do you want to be with us, Russia? And most of the people in Crimea are Russian-speaking. Crimea was always this important Soviet military base in the Black Sea. It was only transferred to Ukraine sovereignty in 1954 after the death of Stalin, when the Khrushchev government was coming into formation in the USSR.
Fucking Khrushchev,
but at that time,
man.
It was really an administrative thing. It wasn't a big deal because Ukraine and Russia were part of the same country, the Soviet Union. So if Crimea was now under Ukrainian authority rather than Russian authority, it didn't matter. It was still the Soviet military base. So if that base had become a NATO base, that means that not only would Russia lose its warm water port, the one that's really attached to the Soviet Union, not the one in Syria, but that base would become a NATO base, right? I mean, if Ukraine had sovereignty over Crimea and that was the biggest Russian base, then it becomes NATO. So it's in all ways unacceptable
handed over
to the Russian government. And again, I think it's important what you're saying, and I really want the audience to think about this. It's in this sort of big geostrategic moment in contemporary history, because it also involves Europe becoming more dependent on Russian energy, Russia and China becoming closer. And one of the things that has happened with this since February 2022, when the Russians came in, is that the opposition to NATO within Europe has been basically muted, nullified. NATO is stronger, meaning it has more countries. There's less anti-NATO skepticism in Europe. Finland and Sweden are now part of NATO. I want to read to you, VJ, something from the New York Times. It's from this week, July 11th. People can go. It's an opinion piece, but the Times decided to publish it, so it's not insignificant. And it dovetails with what you talked about with us on the last time you were on the show, which was NATO's real role and the U.S. view of NATO as an instrument to maintain control or domination over European countries so they wouldn't become more of an ally economically, politically, or militarily with Russia. I want to read this to you and for our audience and then get your comments. NATO, from its origins, was never primarily concerned with aggregating military power. Fielding 100 divisions at the Cold War height, a small fraction of Warsaw Pact manpower, that was the Soviet military alliance, the organization could not be counted on to repel a Soviet invasion, and even the continent's nuclear weapons were under Washington, D.C. control. Rather, it, meaning NATO, set out to bind Western Europe to a vaster project of a U.S.-led world order in which American protection served as a lever to obtain concessions on other issues like trade and monetary policy. In that mission, NATO, has proved remarkably successful. Now, these authors are not complaining about this. They think it's good. They like it. They think, yeah, it worked. But that's the point you were making on our show and elsewhere,
count on me.
that NATO was never about defense, but it was about control.
All this.
Dummy Dorco, thank you for gifting us up to our friend Catalepsy Kills. Thank you for that. Very much appreciated.
Go ahead.
Yeah, NATO was about control. And it's interesting that this opinion piece effectively validates that. The problem is that the world has changed dramatically since the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. See, in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the United States could put something on the table. Initially it was the Marshall Plan. After that, it was various forms of multinational capital investment. Then it was access to the US market and so on. These things are either less available today or they are not as attractive. For instance, US public investment, state investment is simply not available to European countries. The Biden administration doesn't have the finances to come in and say, we're going to build a port for you, or we're going to build a bridge, or we're going to build a university. Those days are long gone. The US ruling class, or at least the economic sections of the ruling class, not interested in paying taxes into the exchequer. Because they're not interested in that, it's very unlikely that they're going to allow investments of a big kind to be made against the future. The government is simply not allowed to borrow and so on. So that public investment is not available. Transnational corporations not investing so much in Europe. You can see this decline. They are investing elsewhere. Of course, they're not investing in Europe, but not at the scale that Europe requires, which is why 17 countries joined the Belt and Road Initiative before this conflict intensified. And finally, when you think about what the United States can give Europe, what it's able to provide for Europe, it's certainly not able to provide the kind of technical assistance at a high level that it used to be able to. The debate in Germany is instructive. When the United States said that, look, Germany can't use Huawei 5G towers. It was clear to the Germans that if they weren't going to get 5G towers from Huawei, there was really nobody else on the market at a good price point able to provide this new technology for Germany. So by the way, Germany didn't ban Huawei. It simply said we can't take the 5G towers. There are Huawei tools used all across Germany. So there is a sense that some of this desire for Europe.
I want some 5G towers.
There are benefits from the United States. Some of this is an
I would love to have a Huawei phone
of the world. There's an anachronism in an opinion piece like that. Now, rather than say, join NATO, stay with NATO, and we can get you this investment, we can get you this technology, we can get you access to the US market, which is not as resilient as it used to be. Now there's a kind of domination effect at work. There's a kind of bullying. If you're not going to be with us, we're going to abandon you. If you're not going to be with us, we're going to muscle you politically. It's interesting the way in which US diplomats in this recent period have been traveling not only around Europe, but around the world, trying to basically force countries to back their position on Ukraine, to send arms to Ukraine, to get for your NATO countries to the 2% military spending. There's a way in which it's not with the carrot. They don't have the carrots anymore. The US market is, as I said, not available to many of these countries any longer. Now they use a stick. And the stick is often diplomatic, which is why when Antony Blinken, US Secretary of State, goes to South Africa, sits down beside the South African Foreign Minister, Naledi Pandor, in the presence of Blinken, says, we will not be bullied anymore. She uses the word
We love
bullied.
it.
There are no carrots on the table, Antony. All you're giving me is the stick. You're telling me I have to do this because you're the United States of America.
Is that shit doesn't fly anymore. I think that's the coolest thing about this era. Whether you want to call it the multipolar era, the multilateral era, or whatever, it's not. This is why we support this, right? It's not just about supporting China. It's not just about supporting Russia or anything, but it's supporting everyone. It's supporting the entire world, the entire global south, the developing world. They just don't have to take this bullshit anymore. They don't have to take the lectures anymore. They don't have to take the IMF deals. They don't have to join the military alliances. They can tell the US to go fuck themselves. And I encourage them to do so. Yeah, BRICS members South Africa. They don't have to listen anymore. It's fantastic. And that's why everyone should support that. It's not just about being pro-China or for whatever, being campist or whatever it is, what people say. You know? It's been such, not only do these peoples and nations in the global south have the ability to develop outside of, without being under the thumb of America and the IMF and these institutions that are tools of imperialism, despite maybe having this ostensible sort of degree of separation from the US government. They don't have to develop under that system. They can develop under the Belt and Road Initiative. And when America comes to them wagging their finger and trying to lecture them about what to do, they can say, fuck you. And there's nothing that America could say about it. And I think that's wonderful. That's something that makes me very happy. And every single time it happens, it makes me smile. And I love it.
And so I said, there's something, frustratingly anachronistic about these opinions, including of texts written by the Atlantic Council, which is effectively the think tank of NATO. When you read the text from the Atlantic Council, they live as if they are in the 1960s, with the United States prepared for Marshall Plan number 2 and so on. The US is simply hollowed out. There is no Marshall Plan number 2. The US, a population
when foreign ministers bully our Secretary of State, I think it's good. Me too.
Simply don't have the market that they used to be able to generate to absorb goods and services from elsewhere. So there's a kind of anachronism. This US elite is living in a world where they're unable or unwilling to look at reality and understand it.
That's right, James. It always made me glad.
And as you said earlier in the show, when the US was trying to figure out, well, what's the post-World War II order look like? Part of the goal was not to have another inter-imperialist war like World War II or World War I, where in the case of World War II, 100 million people die, and all of the cities of the colonial powers are lay in smoldering ruins, and that allowed and triggered, or certainly became a catalyst for the anti-colonial struggles of people in Asia and Africa, the Middle East, everywhere, in fact. The U.S. wanted to prevent the scourge of war, and also, from their point of view, they wanted to stop revolution, because revolution was another outcome. So when you see the motto on the United Nations, it says to end the scourge of war, at least meaning the inter-imperialist wars that were so destructive. So at that time, I just want to give people this little quick history. At that time, the U.S. constituted 4% of the world's population, but had 50% of the world's production. So this enormous privilege. And then Bretton Woods meant that the Bretton Woods Conference in New Hampshire basically stipulates $1 will be the reserve currency of the world. So these enormous privileges. And at that time, as you're saying, and I just want to fill in the blank a little bit, the U.S. was able to offer the other imperialist powers, including the defeated enemies in World War II, Japan and Germany, look, we're not going to crush you. We're not going to treat you like the victors treated Germany after World War I. We're going to let you revive. Your ruling classes will get rich again. And part of it will be, we're going to give you access to the world market, including to the U.S. market. So you can get rich again. But the precondition is that you're going to follow our lead. You're part of a united front against a bigger enemy, communism, revolution. You're going to follow us. So what you're basically saying, Vijay, is that here we are in 2020 or 2015 or 2010, whenever we want to use that point, the U.S. doesn't have that kind of enormous sway in the world market, and thus it has less to offer, fewer carrots to anybody, including the other imperialist powers. So it's basically just the stick. So for South Africa, but also for Germany in a way. Although, Germany, of course, is an imperial power with lots of other benefits. Where does that take us? I mean, the U.S. is determined not to become like empires of old, an empire that has declined and gone into the sunset. It means to stay where it is as, leading the world, dominating the world, being the hegemon. And here we have active war and expansion of NATO, Sweden and Finland, right on Russia's border, basically, now part of NATO. An ongoing war that the U.S. doesn't want to end. I mean, it doesn't seem to me the U.S. is quite content with the war grinding on for quite a bit longer. Where's it going? Where are we heading?
Well, yeah, firstly, I would say that it's unlikely that the United States is going to come to terms with reality. In other words, that the ruling class in the US is going to accept the fact that the world has changed and that the Chinese, for instance, play a major role in the world economy. It's of course true that US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen was in Beijing, in Shanghai. She met people. She tried to say that, look, we don't have a permanent or total conflict. We have areas of disagreement, but let's continue trade and so on. As a softening of tone, whether that is a change of policy or not, we shall see. But the first thing is for the US ruling class to come to terms with the fact that it isn't the most powerful economy in the world. It has the most powerful and deadly military, but it's not the most powerful economy. And indeed, having the most powerful economy is attractive.
We're 40 minutes into the hour-long segment.
Other countries, because a most powerful economy, Chinese, for instance, now are able to provide investments of different kinds. They're able to provide technical support, and to some extent, or to a great extent for some countries, to provide a market for goods and services. So there is an attraction by dint of being a major market, of being a country that can invest in you and so on. So that's the first thing. The ruling class really in the United States needs to come to terms with the major changes taking place in the world. But I also want to say something about the war in Ukraine itself. Firstly, this NATO summit, July 11-12, took place in Vilnius, Lithuania. It's important for people to know that Lithuania was sending weapons to the Kiev government before Russia entered past the Donbass line on the 24th of February. Lithuania has been arming this government for a very long time. They have that kind of relationship. I think it's important to recognize that. Secondly, 28 foreign countries have been arming the Ukraine government in this period since the 24th of February. 28 countries. Of them, 25 are NATO members. It's very clear to most people in the world that NATO has a direct hand in this conflict. This is not a conflict where NATO is a bystander threatening to get involved, but NATO is actively involved, inclusive of the fact that the United States has announced it's going to send illegal.
It's amazing that people still even believe that part.
Into Ukraine. Stunningly, the Ukrainian defense minister called them liberation weapons. This is the kind of terminology we have today. It's a cruel use of language to call cluster bombs liberation weapons. But it's not as if NATO has been a bystander. In fact, let's go back to a little bit of the history of why this war seems to continue. Right when it began on the 24th of February, the Russians and the Ukrainians opened discussions to close down the hostilities. These discussions took place at the border with Belarus, and these discussions took place in Ankara, in Turkey. And they seem to be bearing fruit. They apparently had some sort of principles on the table of agreement to at least have a ceasefire and open discussions and so on. At which point, Boris Johnson, at the time Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, goes to Kiev on behalf, effectively, of the NATO countries and tells Zelensky, we're with you till the end. Don't make any concessions to the Russians. You need to be able to take all your territory back. It's a prestige issue and so on, and therefore prolong the war.
What are you doing, Zelensky? Why are you listening to these motherfuckers?
It's not going to be talked about much that, in fact, there was a near peace agreement. In fact, it is not clear that Russia was interested in
Zelensky got played.
Ukraine. In fact, when Cyril Ramaphosa,
like, people are really surprised. He's being so belligerent. I'm almost starting to like him. Almost. He's being so belligerent to NATO and not being respectful. It's like, no shit. They fucking used him. They used him. And they've given him the big, like, heroic propaganda media blitz or whatever, but, like, they've left him with a fucking disaster that he has to oversee and he has to be the figurehead of. And they're not backing him up to the extent that they're going to. And now you have, like, Melanie Joly saying, like, of course there's going to be a negotiation. That's always going to be the way this is ended, through a negotiation. And it's like, no one has told him that. No one has. She said, like, oh, I've always said this. No, you have not. No, you have not said that. You've said we're in until the end, until the hordes are pushed out and stuff. They're only saying that now, so it must be a surprise to him as well. I thought he was in on it from the beginning. Is he really that foolish? I don't know. It kind of seems like that. But again, he'll become a public enemy if that's what happens. If he goes against the grain and if he stops listening to his orders from his NATO masters, all of a sudden it's going to be like, we've got to go in and get this Zelensky guy. He's overseeing. Do you know this guy's overseeing this incredibly corrupt country filled with neo-Nazi militias that are armed to the teeth? How did this happen? We got to go in there and stop this. And all the same people, all the people that would be like, I love Zelensky. I would let Zelensky make love to my wife. They're all going to be like, yeah, we got to get this guy. All the same people like that. The moment the MK Ultra brain signals start coming from the American media, they'll switch on a dime. We got to get this guy. Seemed like he was genuine in 2019 when he tried enforcing Minsk, or when he ran, right? Like in that election, people point out like, oh, you talk about Ukraine being divided, but look, even people in the Donbass voted for Zelensky in that Ukrainian election because he was saying there's going to be peace. He was going to say, I'm going to stop the conflict. And people believed him.
The president of South Africa took an African delegation to see Mr. Putin just last month. Mr. Putin, during that conversation, said,
"Thank you, Red Scary. I agree with that.
Pulled out of
I would not either.
Of Kiev. He said that was not a defeat. We were not defeated. We were not routed in the battlefield. We pulled out because that was part of the agreement we came up with the Ukraine government in
Oh,
Ankara."
for sure. The Wagner thing was very funny, of course. Yeah. The freedom fighters. What do you mean there's neo-Nazis in Ukraine? Have you heard of Wagner Group? There's neo-Nazis in that. And then as soon as they start rebelling against Putin, they're like, we must support our brave, heroic Wagner Group freedom fighters.
That was actually an interesting revelation. Now, I don't know whether it's true or not. The fact
Great
is
stuff.
that it is a reflection, or at least a memory, that in the early period of March 2022, both the Russians and the Ukrainians seem to be negotiating in good faith in Ankara and in Belarus, and that has now been undermined. And now the appetite for negotiation is almost null.
And that's it, Tails and Wings. How did this happen? Who could have seen this coming? Maybe anyone who remembers NATO's history. That's what I was saying before. That's what dialectical materialism brings to you. It allows you to predict the future with almost pinpoint accuracy. Because you don't have this like goldfish brain. You actually understand how these forces interact with each other and how these events came to be in the first place. And you have a basic understanding of the history of these exact same situations. The Wagner coup is a cautionary tale against doing too much military-grade meth. It really did seem like they had a column heading towards Moscow, and halfway there they were like, they started coming down a little bit. They're like, you know what, this is not a good idea. We may have gotten a little too excited here. Those nights when you're doing coke with your friends or whatever, you're like, we're going to start a business. We're going to do this and do that. By 7 a.m., the sun starts coming up. You're just like, what are we doing? What am I doing with my life? What am I doing? I can't be here. You know, it's like that. One of those situations. This is the best restaurant idea anyone's ever had. We got to get to work. It was very cool of Lukashenko. Yeah, absolutely. The peacemaker. We're opening a bar. That restaurant would have been sick, though. Would have been nice.
In fact, it was interesting to watch Mr. Zelensky in Vilnius, where he spoke alongside the Lithuanian head of government. They stood together. He recognized the fact that Lithuania has been a major backer of Ukraine, despite being such a small country, and so on. At that speech, he basically talked quite bitterly about Ukraine not being immediately taken into NATO. It's interesting because effectively what I'm trying to say is that Ukraine is a member of NATO, Brian, effectively. NATO is backing them in this war. NATO has an active presence in this war. It's providing diplomatic support, providing weapon support. And it is said to Ukraine, at this Vilnius summit, it has said to Ukraine, you will be a member of NATO, just let the hostilities end, because we cannot take a country that's in the middle of a war into a military alliance, which is, I think, a relatively reasonable attitude, by the way, by the major powers in NATO. But they're also being duplicitous, because when they say something like, well, that will trigger Article 5, you've already, in many ways, operated on the assumption that Article 5 has been triggered. I sat through 2 hours of debate in Berlin at the Bundestag, a very interesting debate about the NATO summit in Vilnius. And I have to say that almost every political party at that debate spoke on behalf of Ukraine entering NATO. Now, the Social Democrats, who are the ones in power, Olaf Schulz's party, said that we have to wait till hostilities end. It was only one member of Die Linke, Sevim Dagdalin, who came to the podium and talked about NATO being a destructive force. She talked about the destruction of Yugoslavia, the destruction of Afghanistan, the destruction of Libya. She said that it is a myth to call NATO a defensive alliance. It's an aggressive alliance which destroys very many parts of the world. It's only one member of parliament in the German Bundestag who took that position. So, there's complete unanimity of opinion in many of these countries to pursue this conflict, to back NATO, as they say, till the death of the last Ukrainian. But I think it is also, again, just to repeat this, it is an act of some duplicity.
German Social Democrats fucking us once again.
NATO is not involved. This is effectively a NATO-Russia conflict without the legality of Ukraine being part of NATO.
As we start to wrap up, Vijay, I know you don't own a crystal ball, so I'm asking you for prognostications and predictions. And as Casey Stengel, the former manager of the New York Yankees, said, I never make predictions, especially about the future. So it's a risky enterprise. But I do want to get your sense, in all seriousness, of where things are going, because we can kind of now see that a path has been outlined, and there's a lot of pressure to stay on it, not to deviate from it. And that is this growing conflict with Russia. The U.S. feels that, I think that the conflict in Ukraine has allowed them to close ranks in Europe, where France and Germany in the past were very dubious about including Ukraine into NATO. Most of those doubts or skepticism have been overcome by the nature of the conflict. In 2018, the U.S. reorganized its military doctrine. The war on terror suddenly was no longer a big deal. It was passé. Now it's major power conflict. So the U.S. is prioritizing getting ready for war with Russia and with China. And it's not just doctrinal. Like when you look at contingency planning, the placement of troops, resources, it's all happening. I mean, we're watching in real time preparation for what would amount to World War III if it were to actually happen. And it seems to me that the U.S., if it succeeds in Ukraine, just like once it succeeded in Libya and destroying Libya, that accelerated the tendency to basically go for broke in Syria. That's when Obama, became the mantra became Assad must go, because Gaddafi had been destroyed.
Who must go?
Liquidated. So the outcome here, the stakes are very high. And the Chinese undoubtedly view it the same way. I'm sure they weren't thrilled about Russia going to war with Ukraine. Ukraine was part of the Belt and Road Initiative. I'm sure the Chinese would have preferred a different path. But once the Russians did it, the Chinese, even if they're not for it and have their own peace plan, they weren't condemning Russia, because they probably view it like this, that if the U.S. succeeds, Taiwan and China's next. The war lobby will intensify. So when you think about how World War I started, there was a lot of miscalculations in World War I. Barbara Tuchman wrote her famous book, The March of Folly. As Marxists, we don't view contemporary wars as simply the mistakes of leaders, but there are mistakes of leaders. There's a lot of folly, a lot of miscalculation that is the lead up to war. When you look at the big picture here, it seems very dangerous in terms of where we're actually heading. Africa, Asia, the Middle East, most of the people of the world are not for international conflict. They're certainly not for global war. They may actually feel there's some advantage to the breakup of a U.S. unipolar world, the creation of multipolarity such that they're not just being dictated to. That's another important dynamic of contemporary politics. But if you're like thinking, okay, we're 2023, what are we looking at, say, in 2030? Because the Republicans and Democrats are addicted to this path. They're connected to it. They're not going to change.
No.
Yeah, Brian, 3 points on this, I think. The first one, in May, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres gave an interview to the Spanish daily newspaper El País, where he said something that actually stopped me. I was interested in what Guterres said. Guterres said that, look, there's a Brazilian peace proposal. There are peace proposals coming from the African countries. There's a Chinese peace proposal. He said all this is fine, but he says there's no path to peace in Ukraine. And the reason there's no path to peace is, he said, both sides think they can win. I think that's an important acknowledgement coming from somebody, a high official of the United Nations. What does he mean by that? Well, number one, it's not that the Russians believe that they can take Kiev and hold all of Ukraine.
I wonder how Pinky Doll feels
I don't
about
think
NATO
he's referring
expansion.
to
I'd be
that.
interested
the
to know
Russians
as
have
well.
made it pretty clear that Ukraine is not their objective. Their objective is to hold the Donbass. Their objective is to hold Crimea and to hold the land bridge through Mariupol into Donbass, as well as to what they call denazify Ukraine. Those are their objectives. This is different from annexation of Ukraine. I don't think that's on the cards. From the perspective of Zelensky, I think initially it was to manage the conflict with Russia. Now it's become to take back the lands, which is highly unlikely. To take back Crimea, to take back Donbass, and so on. It's a highly unlikely situation. For the West has made it clear, as U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said in Kiev a year or so ago, that the game is to weaken Russia. They've made that clear as an objective. Again, highly unlikely. It's a nuclear power. It's a major power. It has allies around the world. Unlikely that it's going to be weakened. So Guterres' statement that in El País, which is that both sides think they can win, I think is a chilling statement. It shows that the availability of a path to peace is not there. Now, let's say that's point number one. Point number two, I was just in Germany, interacted.
And sir, we'll get back to that. I just wanted to get to Siparusk's comment there. Livs conveniently forgot that Prigozhin wanted to nuke Kiev and send more troops. I think that's been one of the really interesting things about the way that they've built up Putin as being like number one most evil baddie in the world, right? Is they've lost sight of the fact that there's plenty of people like in the Russian political and military establishment that think Putin's way too moderate. And they're like the idea of cheering on some kind of Russian coup or cheering on Putin being overthrown by these like military contractors. The idea that that's going to be like a positive outcome for anybody, I think is not true. And they could just as easily, and in fact probably would in that case, he would be replaced with someone that would be way harsher and be way more willing to take the fight to NATO and escalate this even more. Yeah, I mean, Red Scary, it's like you can say he's been pretty restrained in Ukraine from what I can tell. It's just impossible to have that conversation with anyone. It's just impossible. Because you can't ever say that, because then they say, when they've built this guy up as just being the embodiment of all evil, you can't have a rational conversation with anybody about that. But I think there's plenty of evidence to bear that out. Let's get back to VJ.
With a number of different political forces. I was interested to learn that the German elites, the bourgeoisie in Germany, the German capitalist class, has a very much contradictory situation now. And the general sentiment, it seems to me, from this
and the far right rising in Germany big time as a result of a lot of these decisions made by the political class.
United States, the German government made us de-risk, decouple, break from our markets in Russia. Germany had German capital had a major, frontal policy in terms of investments in Russia. Okay, so the Germans said, we've cut that. But our red line is we can't cut with China. That is our red line. We cannot de-risk and decouple from China. So this is not going to happen. There is therefore an amazing contradiction to think about within Europe, which is that European capital is feeling hemmed in. They are feeling like they are being dictated to politically, that their economic agenda is not being allowed to dominate, that there's a political suffocation of their economic aims. And I think this is interesting. This is going to create for Europe, I think, severe pressures inside the ruling bloc in the years to come. In Germany, certainly, but maybe also in France. It's interesting to see members of the German conservative wing, the Christian Democratic Party and so on, including the far right. But mainly, it's that kind of the old party of capital, the party of Angela Merkel.
Remember when NATO blew up that POW camp right before the Azov guys were about to start trial? Which I think they tried to blame on Russia as well. Which is and yet another one of these terrorist attacks that was obviously coming from Ukraine and NATO, but which they tried to blame on Russia. Russia, who stood to gain nothing from that, who were just about to have big public show trials of some of these guys. In the same way that they also did not bomb their own infrastructure in the Crimean Bridge or the Nord Stream pipeline or the nuclear plant that's now the subject of a lot of these rumors lately. Ukraine is the most insane actor here because they've already lost. The U.S. is advancing its goals the longer the war continues, and Russia's content to stay behind their lines and maintain their position. It's a stalemate. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like Ukraine's been told now for years, oh yeah, keep going, keep pushing, keep pushing. And now they're left like, looking around for where their NATO backing is supposed to be. And it looks like their NATO's about ready to wrap this whole thing up. It's sad, actually, the way Ukraine has been used in this way. It's honestly like, it's fucking horrible. And, if you're Ukrainian, I totally understand why you would hate Russia, given what's happened over the last 2 years. But I think there's a lot more room for people to get pretty angry at the way they've been completely used by NATO and by Western imperialism.
There's a hesitancy to continue on with these conflicts because the blowback against German capital, has been already quite significant. Now, it's important to say the far right, by the way, is not anti-NATO. In fact, the far right, the Alliance for Deutschland, is very much a pro-NATO party, wants Germany to increase military spending to 2%. People should have no illusions. Far rights are not quote-unquote skeptic of imperialism. They are sometimes the real handmaidens when push comes to shove. But the party of capital has to deal with these contradictions. They are more at the level of the contradiction. So the second point is that capital within at least Europe, if not later in the United States, I think is going to start putting some pressure back against the political class, saying that necessarily our own economic objectives may not be met by this.
Holla back, boy. I think Hassan's busy right now.
Cannot de-risk and decouple from China, which is why Janet Yellen goes to China and says, hey, listen, let's keep trading, okay? We have some problems, but let's keep trading. There is a lot of pressure from the capitalist class saying, look, it's suicidal for us.
I know I'm also very handsome, but I'm not actually Hassan now.
To the global south, the appetite in the global south for the continuation, not of this war.
We often get mistaken for one another, so I get it, but different guy, though. Different guy over here.
War, everybody's
similar
against,
build,
also,
yeah.
And this is important. The continuation of the old neocolonial structures, the appetite for that continuation seems to be diminishing greatly. So that one sees even far-right governments, the government of Narendra Modi, where the foreign minister, Jaishankar, was asked about this suggestion made by some US Congress people that India should be part of NATO plus. Mr. Jaishankar told a news program, NATO plus? He said, no, we are not interested. And he
this streamer's a better jumper, and I wouldn't get my ankles broken by Dave Rubin.
Said, we are against the NATO template. That was the phrase he used. We are against the NATO template. That's an interesting development to see in the global south. Major country like India, perhaps the weakest link in the BRICS bloc, Brian. It's not like a major, stronghold of multipolarity or anything like that. India is very much a balancing act between the West and the South. But nonetheless, here's Jaishankar saying, we are against the NATO template. We don't want these kind of divisions of the world and so on. It goes against globalization. So that, I think, is the third set of contradictions that we're going to see unfold in time. Is we're going to look in August, see what happens at the BRICS summit to be held in South Africa. Very important to pay attention to that. It's very important, inclusive, to go back to the second point, to pay attention to what capital is saying. What are the business newspapers saying? Are we going to see gaps now between, say, the Financial Times and its opinion of wars like this, and let's say the New York Times, which is a major cheerleader for this war? So there are contradictions. I don't have a crystal ball, but what we as Marxists do look at we don't look at clarities in a crystal ball. We look at the contradictions and see how these might unfold.
Vijay, I want to encourage people to start to follow Tricontinental. As the BRICS summit is coming up, it's really important for progressive
We're going to have to cover that, definitely,
to find reliable left, socialist, anti-imperialist sources that are not based on rhetoric or shrill rhetoric, but based on like real facts and analysis and perspective, like Tricontinental does. So real quick, before we end, if people want to become a regular reader of what you're producing, what the other writers and researchers are doing in Tricontinental, how do they do that?
The best thing, and I'm very grateful to you, Brian, for saying all that, but the best thing is to go to thetricontinental.org. It's very easy to find on the web, and you can subscribe to all our material. It's all basically available to you in a number of languages. So come and join us and join the conversation.
Yeah, and people can see on the screen there, tricontinental.org. Vijay Prashad, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Always a pleasure.
That was fantastic. Please, once again, folks, follow Breakthrough News and Brian Becker's program, the Socialist Program. Brian's really, I genuinely really do appreciate everything Brian has done. really has helped me and the people in this community get a grounding and historical framework to understand this conflict that I think I would not have been nearly as equipped to talk about or understand it without the work that he did to help set the stage for that. When is TRRS becoming part of Tricontinental? I don't know. Hopefully soon. That would be nice. That would be nice. Anyway, folks, I'd better go soon. I was doing a little bit longer streams this week, but I think I'm going to sign off for the week. I'll be back again on Monday. I may do some stuff over the weekend. I've been talking about doing some more gaming stuff at night. I'm so fucking tired at night. I'm so tired after like 8, 9 o'clock that it's just been really difficult to ever do that. I've been promising the return of Cyber Rob 2077 for a while now, and I have not delivered on it, but it will come back. I'm going to finish this game on the stream. I do need more gamer fuel, it's true. So, folks, before I go, just remind people one more time. If you want to support TRRS, and you want to support the work that I do here on Twitch, having these conversations, doing this kind of analysis and commentary, that we do over here on this channel, please, if you can, subscribe. Subscribe to TRRS. It's $5 per month. It's completely free of charge with your Amazon Prime account. A few heroic gift subbers could, by gifting 5 or more subs, get us a little bit closer to or possibly over the line of the sub goal. I'm just saying that it's possible. You know, I'm not really expecting it. It's a bit of a shorter stream. And people have been very, very supportive this week and are very supportive overall, always. And I appreciate that. But in case there's a non-subbed viewer or a lurker or someone that's new to the channel or the community, please, if you can, subscribe to TRRS. It's the only way that this content is able to stay on twitch.tv. Plus, look at this. I got a spinny globe. Look at the spinny globe. Huh? Courtesy of our friend Dave Legend, created the spinny globe. I love the spinny TRRS globe. It's so cool.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you very much. 2023, more like 1984. Thank you for the gifted sub. Very kind of you. And hey, just gifted 5. That's 5 gifted subs in the channel, which does actually make you 2023, more like 1984, officially, for now anyways, an elite member of the Friendship Triangle community. Congratulations to you on that. Congratulations to you. Do we have any other takers before we have to go? Is the globe spinning backwards? Yes. Because it's like how Superman turns back time. And it's like we're turning back time to unlearn the non-stop stream of Western propaganda that we're inundated with. Dave and I discussed this ahead of time, and it was very, very intentional. It was very intentional for that exact reason. Kneel before Zod. That's right. Oh shit, it's secret symbology showing Rob's actually counter-revolutionary. No, that's not what it is. That's not what it is. I wouldn't worry about that. It's not that the world is spinning the wrong way. It's that you're moving faster than the Earth because of all these high-level ideas. Huh? We love it. Very good. So do I have any other takers, folks? I'm going to go in a moment. Do any other fine individuals and potentially brave heroes want to support TRRS? I wonder if I do the thing where I do the face. The last trick that I have to pull out of my sleeve here, where I do the face. It's a big gamble, though. It's worked literally every time I've tried to do it. But it's a big gamble, because I might get left out in the lurch, and then I'm stuck. But I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it, okay? And hopefully it's going to work. Hopefully it's going to pay off. But, folks, This is the question, though. This is the fundamental question of our time. Wouldn't you want to subscribe to this guy?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Yes, yes, yes.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, boy.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Gang, gang.
TMI.twitch.tv Cernotis #Robruso.
What was that? What the fuck was that? I broke the internet here. I just broke the internet. Anonymous gifter, whoever you are, thank you. Thank you for the 5 gifted subs. It was a tip message. But I didn't see the fucking... I don't see any tips. What the hell's going on with this channel? The hell's going on here? Thank you very much, Anon, for the gifted subs. Very much appreciated. And I really appreciate all the support this week and always, folks. I really do. I really, really, really appreciate it. Buying a TRRS shirt for my birthday. Hell yeah, up the Reds. We love it. True hero joins the friendship triangle and then just forgoes all the clout associated with joining the elite level. That's what makes them Christ-like. You know, I'm not joking around about this. Thanks again for watching this week, folks. Thanks for supporting the show. I appreciate it a lot. I love you all very much. Thank you. This music means Rob will freeze frame and text on the screen with us what I got up to in the future. It is called Closing Credits, this one. It's a new goodbye song. It's not new. I've had it for a while. I just never put it on. 2 weeks later, Rob gave up politics and became an NPC streamer. You can send him stickers on TikTok Live to this day to get him to say and do things. See you later, folks.